Hello and welcome to another episode of Doc. I'm Ian, your host, and this week again. I'm joined by Matt. Hello.
Hello.
This week we're going to be talking about Tiger King. You must have seen this on your Facebook, your Twitter, just the internet in general. If you everywhere has got memes of this show. You should be watching it if you haven't seen it already. Matt, you must have seen them everywhere as well.
Yeah, it's kind of taken over the consciousness. Well, to a degree, the consciousness of the world in a time where there's kind of horrible things taking over the consciousness of the world right now. So it's nice to have something else to think about.
Yeah, stay indoors, stay safe, wash your hands, and watch Tiger King.
Damn right.
That's what you need to do.
Damn right.
So this came out just over a week ago, March 20th, on Netflix. And we're going to do this episode by episode. We're going to do episode 1 in this episode, and we're going to try to get the podcast coming out as quick as possible. So there should be maybe one tomorrow and hopefully one each day if we can, depending on our lives and all that. Anyway, Matt, what did you think of the first episode?
Really good. Kind of eye-opening to that world. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I not to the point of I agree with any of these animals being caged the way they are, and but yeah, I enjoyed it as a documentary. I felt within the first 10 minutes it packs a punch and it draws you in. You're like, okay, it didn't take long for me to go, okay, yeah, I'm invested. I'm ready to watch the rest of this. So yeah, I enjoy it as a documentary. I've enjoyed the first episode.
Yeah, I was just, I don't know, blown away. There's so much that happens in the first episode. There's just so much going on. I'm like trying to make notes whilst going along. It was just a nightmare. To watch like a 45-minute episode, it must have took me like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Like I'm just kind of pausing, typing up what's happened. It's
because it is. It's literally one thing after the other. It's usually you'll find with a lot of these documentaries, it's fairly easy to talk about because it's usually one subject, one kind of thing, and then everything moves around it. Whereas this just feels like it's covering the one subject of these big cats in captivity, but it's everything around it is so out there as well that I believe there's a point in the episode where they say something like, to understand what really went on here, you could write books upon books about it to ever fully understand it. And I think that makes a lot of sense from knowing what we know watching it.
I can definitely see that. It's just, I feel like within 5 years there'd be like a film about this with, I don't know, like Will Ferrell or something playing Joe Exotic. I don't know. I mean, who else could play him?
David Spade, all day, mate. David Spade is perfect for that role.
Well, because of Joe Dirt.
Yeah, just because he. I don't know about you, but I don't think Will Ferrell looks anything like him. I'd say Will Ferrell would be more for Doc Bhagavan, really.
Oh yeah,
be perfect for it. If you remember Eastbound and Down, the character Will Ferrell played in there, a bit like a Ric Flair pro wrestling character. But yeah, it's kind of that kind of same kind of long greyishy, bleach blondie hair. Yeah, I could see him playing Bhagavan 100%.
Yeah, I can actually. You're right. That's definitely a better shout on that one. I think Yeah, let's talk about Joe. So basically, the documentary opens up with the director talking about how the whole thing's taken him 5 years, and that he it originally started with him investigating a reptile dealer in South Florida, and then like this guy shows up with like a snow leopard in the back of his like hot van, and he's like, "What's going on there?" So,
kind of sends him on the path, doesn't it? To want to understand why people would want to keep big cats, and I suppose to kind of delve into the minds of these people.
Yeah, and he obviously goes to investigate all the major, people who are keeping big cats across America.
Yeah.
I mean, which leads him.
It says in the documentary at that beginning bit that there are more captive big cats in the USA than there are big cats in the wild now, which speaks volumes. Like that kind of that paints a reality that is just kind of backwards and doesn't seem right to me. Obviously, doesn't seem right morally. I mean, not doesn't seem right as that doesn't seem true. But yeah, that can't be a good thing.
No, I mean, and you think how much it must cost to feed, like, these people, just to feed them, like if they're in their back garden, and they're trying to like, they must have a separate job just to feed this cat.
Well, yeah, because it's like you say, like it's not just these kind of wildlife people that are keeping them in their kind of, whether you call them zoos or sanctuaries or whatever. It's genuine everyday people that go out and do their normal jobs, and they're like, oh yeah, come down the road, I've got a pet lion, oh, I've got a pet tiger. Like, it's craziness. Like, and I can't understand those people. Like, I mean, obviously you're going to be kind of talk of the town if you own one of these animals and it's in your backyard or whatever. You're going to be talk of the town.
Don't go around Matt's house. He's got a tiger.
Yeah, watch out for the tiger. Like, but yeah, it's I can't understand. Like, is it because that'll make me popular, or is it a power thing? Is it you get some people who get a kind of, I don't know, a mean breed of dog or whatever to give them a status. Like, they're walking down the street, no one's going to confront them or bother them because they have this, animal that could inflict a lot of damage. Is it that kind of thing as well? Is it a protection thing? Oh, I've got stuff in there that needs protecting, so therefore I'm going to get a lion or a tiger, or no one's gonna try and break in then. Like, it's hard to understand what makes somebody want a creature like that. And
I do think it's a status thing.
Yeah,
it's absolutely a status thing. It's kind of like a power play. It's like kind of like, yeah, I've got a tiger at home and something. Yeah. It's just like, the annoying thing is you can't walk it down the street. You wouldn't go like, oh, I'm just going to go to the shop and leave it outside.
Well, yeah, the moment it leaves that enclosure, it's fair game for the police and the authorities to come and take control. And sadly, if that is to happen, the animal then dies, in most cases, through a fault of a human being, which, is part of the reason why it is so wrong as well, because, these people aren't thinking about the animal. And I imagine as well, these people that have this big cat in their backyard or whatever, they probably explain to people, I'm such an animal lover. I love these cats, they're my world. And it's like, kind of doesn't go hand in hand with what you're doing there.
No, I didn't so much agree with it. I feel like it's just kind of, it's like a just to massage your kind of ego, and it's cruel on the pet. I think. It shouldn't even be called a pet. It shouldn't be called. You shouldn't have like a lion.
It's a wild animal. Like, it would, whether you're its owner or not, given the chance, and it's hungry enough, it will eat you. Like, it will eat you, or it will attack you, and even if it's playing, the power of these animals, just a playful swipe could mean a loss of an eye, a loss of a limb, you know, and the animal may not even be doing it out of aggression. It could be out of play, but these animals play with other animals, their weight, their size, their ferocity. So yeah, like it kind of, a lot of these people are asking for the dangers that come their way.
Let's move on to Joe. So Joe is such a character. It just, I mean, kind of when he comes in, he's calling from was it jail or something like that? Mm-hmm. And like he's talking about how they're gonna possibly put him away for 79 years. They're gonna, like, you know, threaten him with 79 years in jail.
Yeah.
And then it sounds
like he wants to, like, it's a setup for the whole documentary of like, I'm here, but I want to tell you my story or my side of the story. Like he says at one point, you know, let me tell you this, and by the time I'm finished, you'll be saying to yourself, why the hell is this man in jail? So it feels like he's out to prove something.
Yeah, it sounds like he's been set up, or you know, he like isn't. Then it goes into 5 years before, mm-hmm. where it shows you him running the GW Zoo, which is the Greater Windward Exotic. Was it Greater Windward Exotic Animal Park?
Yeah.
Oh, and one thing I need to talk about for sure quickly is he wears this cap, like an SW cap, throughout the whole thing. And I looked into what this was because it was driving me crazy. I had to look it up. What was this? Seth Wadley,
right?
And it's a car dealership.
All right.
So if you think it's like anything to do with like a zoo or whatever, or like the reason why, because I thought it might be related to the name of the zoo somehow, but
no, it's just a random hat he probably got free.
No, but he has multiple ones of these. Like, there's different ones. He's got all different colors and stuff like that throughout the whole episode and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, for all we know, is he done some like promo work for their dealership with a big cat sat on the car or something like that? You know, like. Because even throughout this first episode, you kind of come to understand that Joe has to find certain ways of making money in order to carry on with his zoo through other things that come about, you know?
Like his music videos.
Yes. Which are just, like, it completely threw me. Like, there was... At first, I thought that cannot be him really singing. I was like, this is some, like, he's put a video out there and had some country singer, you know, sing over it for him to make him sound remotely good. Because his singing voice, like, well, I know a lot of people's singing voice doesn't sound like their natural voice. But yeah, very, very different. But... not bad. I'm no massive country music fan, but you know, lyrically maybe not fantastic. But it kind of all seems to revolve around his lifestyle.
I know what you mean. It doesn't feel like it matches him, or no. Like it does feel like he's kind of just singing along to some other country song, but it's his life for sure, from what I can see. And it's great. I love seeing like the little snippets of his music videos, and like it mentions at one point when he goes into the gift shop, he's had 2 albums, and the 2 albums being I Saw a Tiger and Starstruck, and there's 28 songs and 16 music videos, which I need to watch. I need to watch all those music videos.
Yeah, same.
So he runs an internet show. Like, you find out he runs an internet show, and it looks like he got help from a guy called Rick Kirkham.
Yeah. It looks like it kind of started off as, or at least throughout, like how it's portrayed here, it looks like it started off as him kind of doing it on his own, and it not really getting a lot of traction. Like I believe that Rick guy says he had maybe 80 viewers at a time, which, you know, to some people is probably quite a large number, but in comparison to you know, big zoos and things, I imagine they get a ton of a lot more. But it comes across that it was kind of you know, like the word rinky dink, like it was a bit amateur, and so this guy came in because he'd helped produce TV shows before, so I guess he offered to Joe, like, I can make I can garner you more viewers by making this look more like a more professional TV show.
Yeah, and he says he does it like every day at like 6 p.m. And what's crazy about it is it kind of just, you know, if he's doing this to promote his zoo, it's quite like him just ranting on about stuff. Like one of the guys in the documentary says that 9 out of 10 shows was about animal rights people and Carol down in Florida.
Yeah. who we'll find out more about.
Yeah, you'll find out about Carol Baskin in just a bit.
But yeah, it appears that he probably started out making this internet TV show as a way of self promotion, and you know, a way to get his zoo or his reserve or whatever you want to call it, his zoo out there and put on the map in order to, you know, garner more visitors, to collect more money, to enable him to carry on doing what he's doing in a big way. But you kind of get the impression with Joe that he really started to enjoy the kind of miniature fame that came along with what he was doing. Like, he's clearly a showman. There's no doubt about that. He's so eccentric.
He seems larger than life.
100%.
So,
like, if you didn't know this was a documentary, you would believe he was a written character, because he is. He's just so out there. But yeah, it feels like the fame possibly started to go to his head, and then he was using this show more as a vehicle to rant, and to express his displeasure with what animal rights activists were trying to do to him. Like, it feels like he doesn't understand the nature of these people maybe doing this because they don't believe it's right with what he's doing by keeping these animals caged, but it feels like he sees it more of an attack on his life, on his income, on what puts food on his table, which to a degree anyone can understand. You know, like we've all got to pay our bills, we've all got to eat, and we all have our passions. And then if you felt like someone was attacking that, you would kind of go on the back foot and become defensive, because you'll defend what you love. So it does feel like there's a lot of crossed wires between him and all these groups. But yeah, it just feels like he has a bug to bear with them, and it definitely sounds like he used the opportunity of this show to rant and to paint his picture of the way he sees things.
Yeah, it seems like he's got a lot of bad blood with like a lot of people, and it feels like from the internet show, all we've seen of it, like in the show, it's not so much him and his animals, it's him just ranting on about people.
Yeah.
But let's.
Yeah, I mean, like if you if you were a fan of a big fan of big cats, and you were like, oh wow, this guy Joe is doing an internet TV show, and he's an owner of one of these places. Oh, I'll be able to learn so much from this, and then it's just him shouting at a camera about the people he hates. So yeah, it's so out there, so out there.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, exactly. Like little kids tuning in. Oh, I want to see the tigers and stuff. And it's like just him, like shooting the dummy.
Like full on. Yeah, it's craziness. It is. It's craziness in film. It's recorded craziness. Like it's it reminds me a lot of a documentary film, The Grizzly Man. If anyone's seen it, if not, I would definitely suggest it. It's a fantastic film / documentary. But there's a moment in that where the main character does this huge rant to the camera, along the same kind of lines against like people who are trying to attack his way of life and the way he sees things. And it massively reminded me of that.
It's a great documentary. Yeah, definitely check that out. We'll probably do that at some point, actually. That might be one to do in the future.
Yeah, definitely worthwhile.
So Joe reveals a bit about his life. We get introduced to his husband, John Finley, John Finley. He had quite a rough upbringing. I mean Joe, not John.
Yeah, he kind of says, doesn't he, that he realised. I think he said he realised that he was gay. Was it eight years old?
No, it's 13.
Oh, sorry, 13. Yeah. And what was it? His father made him shake his hand in front of his mum after finding out. Shake his hand on not turning up to his funeral because of this, which is kind of that's dark. Like that's enough to really hurt a person.
I don't know if it was related, but he drove his car off a bridge.
Yeah, I mean the way it's put in there, at least it sounds very much so like that kind of. That broke him. Like if your own parents can't kind of take you as you are, then that's kind of heartbreaking. Because your parents of all people are supposed to be your supporters through thick and thin. And yeah, so like you say, he went and drove his car off a bridge. And what was the injuries he had?
He broke his back and then spent 5 years in braces. I don't know if him walking around with a crutch is anything to do with that. I don't know if that's related.
Do you know, like, as I watched it, I kept thinking to myself, what's the crutch all about? I was like, is it just for effect? But I also noticed he's got knee braces on as well. Which are usually for, like, when you've had back problems or, well, he's had more than a back problem. Obviously because it all affects your legs and things. So yeah, I because there's even like I noticed after rewatching the first episode again here, like and after again hearing the fact of him breaking his back, and then you even see because there's often times he's walking without the crutch, and you can see in the way he's walking that he's had a major injury. So I think that speaks for itself.
Yeah, because you would assume that he got like bitten by a tiger or something like that, but it might be just something that he's always had. It's hard to tell because you see him walking about without it. He normally puts his crutch down, and you see him walking about.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, we can only go off of what either Joe or the documentary is telling us. So I mean, it could very well come out that tiger bit into his back or something. But again, we can only go off the truth that is told to us through this. So I guess we kind of got to go with that.
So Joe went round different shopping centers and was performing with the animals. And I mean, originally it started off at schools, I think, and it was like him going around and like kind of basic telling kids, get off drugs, here's a tiger, little cub. And it moves on to was it Mystical Magic of the Endangered, and it was like him with various animals, just doing magic and stuff. And he was his husband John was saying that they were raking in like about 10 grand every time they went to one of these things. And they were going like a massive truck, and there was like loads of animals in there with like 14 crew, and it was just, I don't know, a lot of people disagreed that, you know, I mean, in like really confined space.
Yeah, I mean, you could put it on par, I guess, with I'd like,
it's like the circus.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, I'd like to hope it doesn't still happen these days, but I'm sure it probably does. But especially in the olden days, in times of old, you'd get traveling circuses that would do basically the same type of thing. And obviously, way back when, you know, possibly people didn't see anything wrong with it. It was more of a wonder. Whereas, you know, I like to think now that the world's kind of got to a place where you know, these animals aren't just merely objects for our desires. So obviously, by doing that, you know, people are going to have issues with that. I think whether you were an animal rights activist or not, to have these huge beasts that are usually acclimated to a vast space of wild land for them to roam, to then be put into a very, very small enclosure in the back of a truck or a van. Not good, and completely a completely unnatural setting for that type of animal.
Yeah, which obviously gets the backup of loads of animal activists, which leads us to Carol Baskin. So Carol Baskin runs Big Cat Rescue. It's like an animal sanctuary for, you know, cats that have been taken from circuses or just, you know, seized from elsewhere.
So effectively, like places like Joe has, where he has, you know, big cats in captivity to do shows and whatnot. She believes that these cats or any of these kind of exotic animals, you know, shouldn't be used for personal gain. I suppose.
For entertainment.
They should be. It's kind of tough because it comes across that her way of thinking is that these cats should be in the wild. They shouldn't be in captivity. But it kind of comes across, and I believe Joe even says this about her. It kind of comes across slightly hypocritical in the way she's doing things. Like you can do nothing but commend her in her actions in trying to put forward new rules. I guess to the government, I guess, in terms of laws on keeping these animals as either pets or to be used for like personal gain and entertainment purposes. So I commend her for that, most definitely. But she's effectively taking them from, or at least how it appears, she's effectively taking them from one cage and putting them into another. The only real difference being is that she's not using them to do like kind of shows, magic shows and things. She's not taking them out to shopping malls. to put on shows, and it's more like what we would call a zoo here, where you go and you can look at the animals through these like fences or cages or gates, and her way of thinking is she brings them into these cages so they can live out the rest of their life until they die, like kind of peacefully. But she's still got a reserve, a park, like these are still being viewed like how they wouldn't be in the wild. You know, I guess unless you've got a safari or something like that. But it's still completely different because the safari, you know, a safari is on the animal's territory. And it's not a case of they're locked into it. It's just where they are. And, you know, jeeps and cars and things will go and look, you know, when it comes to like Africa and places like that, or Kenya. So, yeah, there is, or at least for me, there is a slight hint of hypocrisy about the whole thing. But at the same time, it feels like she's trying to push for, I guess, for a better life, so these animals aren't captured, then to be sold. But yeah, it's kind of murky waters with her.
Yeah, I did feel like that as well. I mean, I watched this first episode twice now, and the first time I watched it, I thought, wait, you're doing the same thing. You're doing the same thing as Joe. Like, you're putting these animals in cages, having people come around, giving them little tours and stuff like that. But if anything, you're not paying your staff. They're all volunteers.
But even that though, that kind of reeks a little bit of, so okay, so she's not paying the staff. They're all volunteers because, you know, they're animal lovers. So, you know, obviously there's a lot of people that would jump at the chance to be able to work with these kind of animals. But one, that's not natural in itself. It's no more natural than someone being paid to do that. But also there's a kind of hint of, okay, so is she just raking in all of that money for herself? Or is, you know, if it was a case of, okay, this place is open and all of the money that comes into it then goes on to, you know, protection programs throughout the world for these animals, then fair dues. Like there's some good coming out of that. But I don't believe unless you have heard any different, but I don't believe it says that in this first episode at all.
I mean, it doesn't say anything about where the money goes and stuff, and people are volunteers. But one thing I did think though was,
like, because she still charges for people to go there.
Yeah, I realized what the difference is between her and Joe is Joe breeds the animals so people can, like, you know, pet them and stuff like that. Like he has cub petting, whereas she's dealing with the animals that, like, people have, like, don't want anymore because they can't, you know, you can't pet these animals, you can't have them out and about, like, around people because they're past the age. Because in the documentary they mentioned that you can only really have cub petting from the first couple of weeks of the cub's life to 12 weeks, and after that they start getting, like, you know, bitey and scratchy and stuff like that, and they will, like, attack you.
And again, it might not be in terms of the animal attacking. Especially at a young age, it's probably an animal playing. But these animals are a lot more, you know, a lot stronger than your average human, and especially a child. So these animals could be literally, you know, say swiping out with their paw out of fun, thinking it's play. But again, if you've got like a 5-year-old child or something, and, you know, one of these cats does that to them, it's obviously going to cause some damage. But again, not by the cat wanting to do the damage, but by it not knowing its own strength, not knowing the difference between like its strength and this child's strength, so to speak.
Yeah, and these cats have been raised in captivity. They don't. They've just been like thrown their food. I don't know if they have. I mean, it's kind of like nature nurture, isn't it? It's kind of, you don't know how they're going to be around people. Are they going to revert back to how?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a strong, rather strong believer in kind of like animal instincts. So whether they're you know, raised in captivity straight away from a cub or not, I think with animals, you've in the back of your head, you've always got to, you know, almost be looking over your shoulder to. Well, I've always heard never turn your back on a tiger, because that's there. It's almost like a trigger point for them to stalk their prey. I don't know if you've ever seen any videos from like zoos and things, and it's literally, people will be sat there, say it's like I don't know whether it be perspex glass or what, but you'll find there's a lot of videos on YouTube of like people at zoos and that, and what they'll do, they'll go up to the glass and then they'll literally like turn their back and sit, and then you watch straight away within seconds the tiger basically like start stalking and ready to pounce, and it will lunge at the window, because it's a part of their mechanism, and I don't believe that goes away. I think that's built in them. If you could like take these cats and rather than putting them back in cages, release them back into the wild, like they'd probably stand a less of a chance of survival because they've just not known that world. But I think they would still know how to hunt, and like, because I just think that is naturally built into them.
I don't know. I think that's maybe why they're in the cages here. Like why they're not just released back and like flown to the wild, put into the wild. I maybe that's why she hasn't released them.
Well, it could be that. It could be because that would just then, by doing that, you would be putting even more stress onto that animal by, you know, because it's not just a case of, oh, well, it's wild over the road, so we'll just put them there. It's a case of, you know, this animal would more than likely have to be knocked out, you know, with a dart or whatever. I don't know what they use. And then be, I guess, boarded onto a plane or a boat of some sort. And it's just, I guess, to a degree, especially if these animals are kind of aging now, that stress alone could possibly kill them, I guess.
I don't know. I'll look it up for next episode, I think. That's my plan. I'll look it up and see what happens when you take a tiger that's been like raised in captivity and put it into the wild, if it can happen, if there's a certain point where it can't survive on its own anymore.
But I mean, that would definitely be interesting, especially to kind of help to understand like Carol's conviction, like, and why if you have such an affinity for these animals, because there's no doubt about it, in this episode you are under the understanding that she is pretty obsessed with big cats.
Yeah, she's got like all of her clothing is like kind of cat print clothing, and she's, I don't know, it's weird.
She basically has her own Superman room, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, from the last doc we did. Oh no, the doc before, Confession of Superhero. Yeah,
it's basically it feels like pretty much everything she owns is either animal print or there's 100% an obsession there.
Yeah, but which is really weird because, like, she mentions, it's like really quick. I didn't notice on the first watch, but she says that she's allergic to cats.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's one thing I did feel strange about this is, I don't know if it's me thinking this or if I'm how I'm meant to feel like it, but she's kind of almost portrayed as like the villain in this.
It feels like it, but I think to a degree, it kind of sets up on that note at the very beginning when you're seeing Joe or hearing Joe from prison, and he states there about about Carol, or well, no, it states why he's in prison.
Yeah.
So effectively, right away, and from going from that, then on to showing Joe 5 years earlier, and it's kind of this like almost like this like lovable rogue. Like it's just, you know, it's other than the animal side of things, which, you know, obviously everyone can have their own opinion on that. But as a character, he's kind of just, I don't know whether it feels like he's portrayed in a better light or whether he's just so eccentric that it's hard to see beyond that.
He's a lot more likable, isn't he? Like in terms of he comes across like instantly likable.
Exactly. And then it goes from that to her. So I think there's an air of something with that, like, because you're already under the impression that, okay, so 5 years from now he's in jail for trying to get her killed, but you can't really. It's tough, but I do agree. Like from the get go, there's an air about her, and I don't know if it's her or whether it's the way it's being filmed. Like there's times where you could put like some like evil maniacal music over her scenes, and it would just fit perfectly in the way it seems to be filmed, and her expressions as well. Like you get a lot of rolling eyes with her, and especially with certain, like, there's times where she says certain things and her eyes go that way, and I'm like, is that like a tick? Is that kind of a, you know, is that telling of anything about her? It's very tough to call with her, because like on the surface, what she's doing, I guess in comparison is better. But like
she's doing it for the right reasons and stuff. Like overall, like I mean, she is looking after, I guess, probably elderly cats that can't go into the wild.
But this is the thing, they never say that. They never say that, so it's very hard to actually distinguish that point. And it comes off very, very hypocritical. Like in one scene, she's like in a cage doing a scene, like in this little cage, as if she's a caged animal, and she's explaining to the camera, you know, how terrible it is for animals, exotic animals, to be kept in cages. And as she's saying it, directly behind her, in her place, is a caged tiger. So it's just tough, and I don't know whether, you know, it could be a case of the documentary maker asking her, can you do this bit from that cage, you know, and then it looks worse, but I don't know if he's directed her to do that or whether she's wanting to do that, because it comes across as well like she really likes to be complimented on what she's doing. Like it feels like she needs to be, or she wants people to reassure her of what she is doing is right, but it means even more to her that they're saying it to her on camera. Like I get that air about her, very much so.
I mean, there is that air of mystery to her from, as you said and stuff. But I don't know. I think it's because for the most of the documentary up to this point, it's Joe kicking off about Carol hating her, and like I think it's through his lens that is painting her in that light.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
But I do agree, but I also, it's very tough to tell, because it really, it's hard to know without knowing the motives of the filmmaker, and whether they're being completely impartial or whether they're taking sides. So it's difficult to tell for me. Like I trust my gut instincts, I think it's important to trust gut instincts in life. There's just something. But again, I don't know whether that's just because it's being portrayed in that light, or whether it is just a gut, something telling me, no, there's something not right here.
Joe and her are like quite similar people in that sense. Like, as they both wear like cat print stuff. They're both kind of.
I feel they are, but I don't feel that Joe. I feel that I feel that Joe's more obsessed with himself than he is with the cats. Whereas I feel she, at least in this first episode, she comes across that she has a massive obsession with the cats themselves.
Yeah, I mean,
but then if you're obsessed with something, then having them in kind of your backyard, you know, that like it just, a lot of it doesn't add up to me. Like it feels like, and like from, I guess, from Joe's perspective as well, that it feels like she kind of wants all of the pie when it comes to these animals. She doesn't want to share. And I think that's the impression that Joe gets, most definitely. And I guess you could look at it in that way as well.
Yeah, because it shows that she has been kind of sabotaging his shows on when he was on the road doing the magic thing. She would like get her followers to bombard the shopping centers with like loads of emails saying like, oh, we don't want mistreatment of animals and stuff coming to this place, and like that essentially ended the roadshow for him completely, didn't it? Let's talk about the other person in the documentary, the other major player anyway in it. What is it? Dr. Bhagavan Antle.
Doc, just Doc.
Doc, just Doc. We'll call him Doc.
Why do you keep calling him Doctor?
Because he refers to himself as Doctor. He says, "Oh yeah, it's Dr. Bhagavan Antle."
I'm sure he just says Doc. Yeah,
Bhagavan, Bhagavan, Antle, Angle.
He's very, like, he comes across as like extremely professional. Like, I guess that's the only way I could describe, like,
control freak. That's what he feels like to me. Control freak.
He's definitely created his own little universe that he is kind of boss of. Like, he says what goes.
Yeah, but like, it's my favorite part about the whole thing is the documentary filmmaker must have thought, fucking hell, this guy is just directing us. He's directing us. He's kind of calling the shots. Like, so they just left all that bit in. So that's what's funny about it. There's bits where he's suggesting what shots they should do.
Oh yeah, where it's like, right, we'll go to my house and I'll open the door to you, and then we'll go from there. And it's like, okay.
And they left that in there. They left like all the parts where it's him talking. It's him kind of suggesting how it should go. He's very much
he's trying to create his own narrative.
Yeah, but he's trying to control his image completely.
Of course.
But they've left that.
Of course, from what you see on that, like I'd very much like to see what he's like when the red light isn't on, because it is very much like he almost has. It feels like he has a persona for when he's being viewed, whereas in contrast to, say, Joe. Like, Joe is just out and out Joe. Like, what you see is what you get. Like, like he seems, for good or for bad, whatever way you want to look at it. But, it does come across with Joe like it's very much what you see is what you get. Whereas Bhagavan, it feels very contrived. Like you said, like a control freak. Like he is the master of his domain. He is in control of what goes out about him.
Yeah, I just feel it's crazy. It's like, for him, it's just kind of like where he's looking at the bit from where he's on was it Jay Leno, and he's like kind of the way he's saying it, it's kind of he's presenting. I guess he's always like in the showmanship anyway, but because like a lot of his animals are like used in like lots of films, so imagine he's probably picked that up because he's
I've worked on... definitely. Like it becomes again like another kind of status thing or a status thing. Like, oh well, I've worked in movies. You know, me and my cats have worked in movies. Who are you? You're below me. I've worked on Ace Ventura. Who the hell are you? Like, but yeah. So his work, basically, it sounds almost as if you've seen a kind of wild animal in a film that isn't CGI or puppetry, then more than likely it's come from Bhagavan.
Yeah, and one thing it's said on the doc is that he has it so that he wants the animals to live in like without cages. They're like just roaming about on their own. So he has like quite a lot of land. It's was it Myrtle Beach?
I mean, from the get-go, you can tell that he is, he's a powerful man in terms of money. But then I guess, through working on all these movies and things, that alone would create a pretty vast income. And then I suppose if you do a good job on one movie, no one gets hurt, everyone's happy, no faces ripped off, then you're going to get called back for another movie and another movie and another movie. And you could look at that as almost the same as what Joe's doing with his magic shows, I guess, because it's unnatural. It's not normal. Yeah, they may be tame, but bringing a wild tiger or a lion and a big cat onto a film set, that's not a natural setting for one of these animals. So you could say he's kind of just as bad as Joe in terms of how he's exploiting the animals for personal gain.
I don't know. I think he's doing it in a more profitable way because there's in the documentary it mentions like how much it costs from like, and he says it costs from $339. Oh,
what to go and see his animals?
Yeah, to go and see his animals, right? So I looked up I went onto his website and I looked on there, and without a digital photo package, participants, which is for like a wild encounters day safari tour without photos, it's 339 quid, and then it goes up and up and up as it goes on. So he must be making the most money out of all those.
Sure, he's absolutely raking it.
It's
like you see a scene with him like coming out like on an elephant, like on the back of an elephant.
Yeah,
and it comes across like he is like just the look of him. You can tell again, it's a power thing. It's look at me up here, like this is my beast. I've tamed it, and now I'm riding it. Like it's very strange.
Do you reckon he does that every time?
I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't.
Every tour.
It wouldn't surprise me. I wouldn't put it past him. Like if you were going to one of those things, like to see a fully grown adult on the back of a huge elephant walking towards you, that's not something you see every day, is it? So no. Just as much as, again, a comparison to Joe, as much as Joe loves the kind of limelight, I think Bhagavan does as well. Maybe even more so, but just kind of more subtly.
Yeah, because there's because I feel like he's definitely his whole place has like a kind of a Disney vibe, doesn't it? It feels like I don't know if you've ever been to Disneyland, the way they kind of do their little tours or they do things like that, it's always done in this kind of way where it has someone going, oh, hi. And then like it has someone kind of coming out of nowhere going, oh, look, it's Bubbles the elephant. And, Bhagavan on the back of him.
Can I tell you one thing that
yeah.
I really do dislike about him? His little soul patch.
Little
oh my God! Shave it off, man! Shave it off. What is that? Like, that's offensive. That's offensive to me.
No, but he obviously, it's weird. It's like night and day difference for what he used to look
like.
Yeah.
You see photos of him, don't you, when he was younger, and he looks like a kind of like vagabond, like hippie, like looks like straight out of the 70s.
Yeah, it does look quite crazy. And there's like a bit where there's like a sword, like there's like a sword there as well, and.
Yeah, I think you can tell as well from those pictures of old of him that that money has definitely come into his life since, like in a rather big way. Like he comes across like extremely corporate, like very what's the word? Like almost like overly polished is the only way I could describe it. Like and whether that's like polished so much that it hides things, possibly. I don't know. Like, obviously, read into the documentary what you will. But yeah, it's he's a strange one. He's a strange one.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes with him. It's just. Yeah, we'll see, I guess. But I feel like if you look at if you look at Joe and you look at him, it's kind of polar opposite to how it could be. Like, whereas I think Bhagavan is kind of making a lot of money, like he's doing it in a way where it's kind of like it's out and about. I mean, he still has cub petting, which is frowned upon. But other than that, like it's quite in the out and about, like in the wild.
Well, that's it. Like
they have
with
space
with the cub petting, like you come to understand that like let's say Carol and her group, like they appear to be completely against that, which I'm guessing most like kind of animal rights people and animal rights activists would probably say the same. But Joe and Bhagavan, they both paint a different picture, and they say that by introducing someone to these animals, it creates an almost a bond and a real life feeling of, okay, like I've now held one of these babies. I don't want these babies to die, so therefore, now I've had that connection with them, I'm willing to do more to help them, because sadly, there are people that will just go out and try to help without needing that. But sadly, in this world, it might take something like that to really push some people to believe, that they want to help. So you can see the two sides of it, but at the same time, it is completely unnatural to be petting a tiger cub as a human. So yeah, it's you do definitely get two different contrasts.
I think that's bullshit overall. Like, in terms of, I think they're doing the whole thing where you pet you see the little cub and you're like, oh, it's gonna save the rainforest overall, but they've made that cub. They've like had that cub. They basically really.
I know. I understand. So that cub's not from the wild. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Like, the thing is, the cub petting phase is only maximum of 12 weeks. Like, I mean, that's not even 12 weeks. It's probably like 11 weeks. But Joe or someone said that they would make like $100,000 within that time just on this one cub. They're gonna constantly breed these animals, and that's why Carol has such a big problem with it, because like they breed these animals. They at the end of it, they're like, hey, if you want to buy one of these, ones that have gone past the point of no return for us, like people are like, yeah, I love little Joey the cub. I'm gonna take Joey home with me, and obviously it gets out of hand. Like Carol has to pick up the pieces, and like she can't house them all because like Doc Antle, he says that per cub, no, not per cub, per tiger per year, it's $10,000 to feed each one, which is insane when you think about how much.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, there's no doubt about it in my mind that they're doing the cub petting. Like, in reality, they're doing it to make money. Of course, they are. It's one of their offered like gimmicks of their reserve. So of course, if you can charge a lot of money for something and you have the opportunity to do so, and if your morals aren't quite, up to scratch with maybe the rest of the world, then of course they're going to do that. So yeah, I totally understand that they're using what they're saying by, the connection, will create people to want to go out and save these animals. I totally understand that they're saying that as a line of defense.
I can see why they're in the wrong though. Overall, those, like, if anything, they are. I mean, as likable as they are and all that, they are essentially the villains of the documentary so far. In terms of they have bred this animal just so they can make money off it, and then it doesn't matter where it ends up. That's the end. So you got to think, as much as Carol comes across like she isn't right.
I suppose you could say that in terms of the practices that the three of these people do, she to a degree has the moral high ground. I could definitely agree with that. But what would be more interesting to me would be to find out what would happen to these animals. Like can these animals be re-released into the wild? Or failing that, because with Carol, you don't, at this point at least, you don't really get to see a lot of the actual reserve. How big is it? Are these animals in wild spaces, and the cage part is just like a border, like a barrier between obviously the humans and the animals? But do they have basically a full safari-sized piece of land that they're able to roam freely? So, but I do wonder if that's the case, because if that were the case, and you were bringing people in to pay and see these animals, if they're 2 miles away down at the watering hole, then you ain't going to see anything at the side of the cage. So
we'll look into this and find out what.
I do think it's tricky to really. I think to a degree, from this first episode, I can totally agree that that out of the three, Carol is, in a sense, she is saving these animals, especially from these one-time owners. I've got a lion in the backyard in a 5 foot by 5 foot little cage. She's saving them animals. There's no doubt about that. That she is doing good by doing what she is doing there, and doing good by trying to pass laws, I guess, to stop the general public just being able to buy a tiger on a whim. That'll look nice in the garden. So I totally understand that she's doing good there, but I think it is very, very, very murky waters in terms of what they're all doing. They're all caging wild animals. At the end of the day, in terms of that, they're all in the wrong.
I mean, it kind of leads us on to the next part, which is it shows the results of what happens when people go to the extreme and they buy loads of these animals, and then the animal rights activists come along and release them all, and it causes massive chaos overall. There's a bit where it shows you like all these like tigers, these I think there's a bear or so in there as well. There's yeah, like lions, tigers, and all that stuff. Yeah, panthers. They're all like just lying dead in like a massive heap because like some person has bought all these animals from like all these zoos when they probably got too old to be handled by people. And then obviously some animal rights activists come along, set them free, you know, with good intentions overall, but they basically just got massacred because the police are not gonna. As soon as they come off their land,
is like even that. Like I get the activists' point of view of, you know, them not agreeing with these animals being in the situations they're in. I totally understand that, but by releasing them in the way that they do, it ends up with those animals dying. So really, it again very tough. It ends up with those animals dying pretty much, most definitely, because if they're out amongst the public, there's a great likelihood that they will attack. So therefore, the authorities of wherever this place is then have to take action, which ends up in the death of these animals and ends up in that scene where you see, you know, what, 10 of them lying in a heap dead. Like, so
if anything,
would the activists say that by those animals dying in that situation is better than them being kept where they are? Is that the point, or is it a point? Because I think they do it because then it creates like mass hysteria. It then grabs media attention on these places that house these animals, and obviously, you know, if these animals did, when they were set free, attack any individuals, as horrendous as that would be, it would create a huge media buzz, which in turn could then create legislation, I suppose, to stop these animals being held captive. But it's just it's a rather dark way of going about it.
It's difficult because then the documentary goes on to show that they're trying to like pass laws to stop, you know, the ownership of these animals, and this obviously gets Joe kind of all riled up, and he gets interviewed on the news, like in the aftermath of, you know, all those animals being slaughtered and stuff, and he says that if they come to try to take his cubs and his tigers and that, there would be a small Waco on their hands, which I looked up because I'm not familiar with that whatsoever.
I'm not either. I've not looked into it.
So Waco is referring to it's like the Waco Siege of 1993. It's in Texas. Basically, what happened was there was a religious sect called the Branch Davidsons, and basically the U.S. government thought that they had basically like loads and loads of weapons on this.
So what was it, like a community / cult? Yeah,
it was like a cult, and they thought that they were gonna do a Jonestown and kill everybody, like kill themselves or kill, you know, just go on like a whole rampage. Spree kind of thing. Yeah, like so, because it was kind of like really sketchy what it was. And what happened was, because they were so concerned, that they were gonna, you know, take it to the extreme. There was a massive like siege overall, and it was like the was it ATF agents, the government agents stuff going in there, and it lasted 51 days, like a big siege
bloodbath,
for them,
I
and
imagine.
it resulted. it resulted in 86 deaths. And 4 of those were like these agents.
The rest were the people.
Yeah, and then 16 were like wounded and stuff. But it was massive.
Do you know if they ever found out if that
was
the plan for this group to go and attack or to kill themselves, or were they, America loves their guns.
They apparently,
they
denied, said there was no plan for a mass suicide. But it's just when there's a cult involved and there's guns
it's
involved,
dangerous.
And
it's
there's
very dangerous. Yeah.
Well,
so you can totally understand the authorities having to take some kind of action.
No, but it's still terrible.
Oh yeah, it's horrible.
The amount of people that died.
You can understand them trying to take some kind of action, but you would hope at least that maybe, I think this is a bit of a problem in our world, probably has been for a long time, is the fact that sometimes actions, like drastic actions like that, are taken sometimes before talking. And sometimes things can actually be solved through actually talking, communicating, and understanding. But again, I don't know anything about it. I don't know if it was a case of maybe they sent in spies, maybe they sent in maybe there was information that this was going to happen, and then I guess you could understand them having to go in and take things into their own hands. Again, kind of murky waters without knowing factual stuff about it.
So obviously Joe's up on like a rampage about this, and he says all this, and it leads him to go into a gun store and buy loads of guns. He buys not loads of guns. He buys loads of bullets anyway, and he buys explosives. And
so hang on, what was that thing called? That group? It was called the.
They were called the.
No, but what was the situation called?
Oh, it's called the Waco Siege.
So I was going to say, I don't think you said what Joe referred to, why he or how he referred to it, to the camera, to the news crew.
Oh, he referred to it as a small Waco. So it was like saying.
So basically, he's saying if people tried to come in and take my animals, then there would be a small Waco. So it effectively him saying, you try and take my animals, and I'll take the law into my own hands and dispose of you, in a bloodbath. I guess that's kind of it's kind of a bit of a threat, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, because there's like signs all over the thing. You see like signs all over the thing saying we don't call 911. And it has like a picture
basically
of a gun
saying we'll deal with our own problems.
Which, like, so it shows him going to a gun store. It shows him buying like bullets and all that, and he has like this massive.
Hang on one sec. Like, I guess rifle. In America as well, isn't that like a part of law? Like, if you trespass on someone's property, you have the right to shoot. So
yeah, as far as I can tell,
it's a threat, but it's also, I guess, and there'd be a lot of Americans that would say that, if a trespasser came into my house, I would, unload bullets. But you can tell that he's putting it out there as a threatening way of, you mess with my shit and you will pay, basically. I think he even says at one point something along the lines of I guarantee you, before you take any of my animals away, you won't be breathing. So again, another threat, like, before you take them away, you will be killed.
Yeah, I actually wrote that down. Actually, he does it on his like internet show. He says, "For Carol and all her friends out there, it is my belief that before you bring me down, you will stop breathing."
Those are that's it's a pretty hefty statement.
The thing is, I don't know how he could get away. I mean, if you did that in the UK, if you said like, like if you know, I'll basically kill you, kind of thing. Like that's essentially a threat, and you could probably be done
Yeah, but
for.
again, it's different in America, isn't it? Because like your property is your property, and you've got the you're fully within your power to use firearms if someone trespasses. So I don't know if it would be viewed as the same, unless you're actually going up to a person and maybe waving a gun in their face and threatening them that way. Off of your property, then I could, in the American system of the way things are done, then I could understand getting in trouble for that. But I guess it would be no different to having, like, I guess the closest thing we've got to it in this country is someone having on their door, "Beware of the dog." Do you know what I mean? Like, it's it's a threat. It's you come in and you will deal with the consequences of my dog attacking you. Let's just swap a dog for a gun. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, beware of our dogs. Be careful. Like, I mean, you can say beware of the tigers. Beware of the lions. We'll just let them loose. Like,
it's America, man. It's America.
I don't know. Well, I mean, any Americans out there, if we're completely wrong about this, please correct us. Send in like a message and let us know. Because I can look into this after the podcast anyway. But it'd be, if you want to correct us, go for it. Because I'm unfamiliar with.
Yeah, and when I say it's America,
American
I'm not
laws.
saying like that it's bad or good. Like, so please don't take it that way. But it's vastly different to how we live in this country. So it's just it's kind of just very different. I couldn't even think about. I can't even think about weaponry in the home like that because it's illegal here. No. It's not allowed.
We just have strong conversations and hope for the best.
A lot of finger pointing.
Yeah. So Joe goes to the shop, buys explosives, buys pellets, and he has a Carol doll. Well, I mean, he has like a mannequin that he's kind of put a dress on. And like the whole episode ends with him shooting at some explosive that's attached to the doll and blowing it up. And he basically says, "Oh, Carol, this will be you."
It's basically him. Like I won't know it word for word, but again, he's making kind of loose threats that if your people, your associates, or any of these animal rights activists try to come in here and destroy my world that I've built for myself, then these will be the consequences. And I think the next shot is him with I don't know if it's a shotgun or a rifle, but yeah, I think a shotgun, and he's shooting into a lake like and full on power. And then the next bit, you've got this mannequin, not dressed up at this point, but it's like tied to a tree or something. In fact, it must be a different mannequin because this one blows up. And he's obviously put this, I don't know whether it's gunpowder or what, and attached it to the mannequin. And he shoots at that, and it just explodes. Well, let me tell you, I definitely wouldn't be going in there to try anything.
Yeah, and then it cuts to like 4 years later, and he's in the Grady County Jail. It's in 2019, so it's only last year. And he ends it with saying, "Before this is all over with, I'm going to shut everybody down." And that's it. So that was the first episode. I am excited to get into the next one. There's just so much, like, considering we've talked about this for so long
obviously
already.
Usually with documentaries, maybe not so much these days, but with Netflix and all that, you're getting more kind of episodic documentaries. But initially a documentary would usually be a kind of one and done. Like here's what we're showing to you, and it's in one, say maybe 1 hour format, or maybe longer, maybe slightly shorter. So yeah, like even this first episode feels like a mini documentary in itself, because there is just so much to it.
So much to unpack.
But it does a very, very, very good job of making you want to come back.
Yeah, I'm dying to see the next episode. I can't wait. It's going to be. We'll try to have it out in the next day or two after this, so we shouldn't have to wait too long. If you want to have a rewatch with us and just rewatch the first one, listen to this, and then we're going to the next one.
Well, even like you said, like on watching this first episode for a second time, like because obviously we need to make notes and things. But it's another one of those ones where I think you're so enamored with the first watching of it, like just because there is so much going on. It covers a subject that I would say not a lot of us have really any experience in, unless you work in that world. So yeah, there's so much going on, and like you said, in the second watch, like you kind of noticed things that you didn't pick up on the first watch. So, if you have already seen it, I'd say it's one of those documentary programs that you could easily. I mean, you could easily go back and watch it anyway, because it is quite entertaining as a piece. And like you say, there's always with a second watch you can pick up more than you got from the first watch.
Even if you want to take screenshots for memes and make your own memes out of this. And that's it for the first episode. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to send us an audio message or an email, or just contact us on the social medias, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram.
We want to hear from you.
Yeah, I want to hear from you. And if you respond to us, we'll put you in the next episode towards the end, and we'll do some feedback. And if we don't get that, we'll just make it up.
Mr. Snrub from Springfield says.
Also, leave us a review and a rating and stuff on iTunes, because that helps. If you want to do that, I don't know if you listen to iTunes anyway. But that's it. I'm gonna stop rambling. I'm gonna go edit this and
on to episode 2.
On to episode 2. So come back in a couple of days. Subscribe and you'll see it in your feed. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.